Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another intriguing young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nerida Mills. I am based in Perth, Western Australia, and I have a little bit of an interesting story. I guess I want to start by taking you back to January 2020, and I know this is where a lot of people have significant memory because it was the very beginning of COVID. For myself, it was a little bit of a different experience because I was training for the Rottnest Challenge swim, which is a 20K open ocean water swim. I was also training for my black belt at the time, and I had started to experience some unusual symptoms in my body, which was not uncommon for me, but it was something that I felt like I needed to start paying attention to because of the events that I was training for. I wanted to make sure everything was covered and we were going to be all good. And so I'd just come home from an appointment to try and uncover what these symptomologies could be linked to. And I remember I was living in a little fibro shack house right near the coast here in WA at the time. And I opened up the door, and as you open up the door of this house, you look down the hallway, and right down the hallway, it opens up to the kitchen. But my daughter was standing at the end of the hallway. And I remember I took 2 steps into the hallway, and then all of a sudden I was smacked in the face with a surge of neurological symptoms. What that looked like for me was my legs went weak. They turned to jelly. My arms went weak. My perception completely warped. So it felt like I was out of my body. I found it really hard to articulate. I found it hard to breathe. I had kind of like, it's really hard to explain the actual sensation, but it's like everything in my body was tingling and felt kind of half numb, half present. And to be honest, I felt like I was having a stroke. I put my hand against the wall for some support and looked at my daughter, and she just looked up at me. She was about 14 at the time. She looked up at me. She goes, "Mum, are you okay?" And I just looked at her, and I had nothing to say but, "No, I'm not." And she helped me slowly to my bed. And that day was the beginning of what would be a 5-year journey in overcoming what I was eventually to learn was Lyme's disease. But Lyme's disease didn't become apparent to me until 2023, that was actually the cause. And what's interesting about that is I've actually probably had it since 2001, 2002. So I've spent really 20 plus years dealing with unexplained symptoms or symptoms that were told to me that were probably just in my head. I needed to manage my stress better. And really gaslit a lot by the medical industry. Here in Australia, we don't recognize, or the AMA doesn't recognize, that Lyme's disease is present in this country. And so it was a constant and gaslit by doctors over that 20-something year period of time whilst I tried to understand my symptomology. And so that really led me to start looking outside of the square as far as how to actually overcome what I was dealing with. So I had a deep desire to get to the root cause of what could be creating my symptoms. And if we look at the absolute depths of the root cause, what you'll find is energy vibration and emotional holdings. And so, you know, my work or my own life journey led me into my work, which was a deep discovery of my spirituality, quantum physics, how energies actually create matter and how we can influence that. It also led me down the path of human behavior and understanding the way that the mind works, along with psychosomatic therapy, which is the connection between the body, mind, and emotions, and how that thinking and emotional patterns express through the body and create disease, ailments, injuries, issues, things like that. And so my own symptomology really guided a massive undertaking in understanding what it is that actually creates our experience, both from an emotional standpoint, a mental standpoint, and a physiological standpoint. And what's interesting about that is that it would require my application of everything that I had learned previously over the previous 20 years in order to actually not just meet myself in what was to be month-long experiences of being bedridden, of not being able to look after my children. I was a single mum at the time, of not being able to leave my house alone, and of having other secondary side effect symptoms and issues that would come up. I had to use everything that I had learned in the past in order to both meet the immediate situation, or what I like to call the acute symptoms, as well as to actually heal the fundamental issue causing the chronic symptoms. And I'm very happy to say that in May this year, I did get the results back that I have in fact cured my Lyme's disease, which is absolutely fantastic. And now I am extremely passionate about helping other people to understand how the mind, body, and emotions impact our experience on all levels, how to utilize life's experience and the teachings that life offers us in order to prepare us to overcome those challenges and to be able to actually step forward powerfully in our own expression, and to really be able to help people to reduce the amount of suffering that they're experiencing. So one of the things that really dropped in for me in the process of 2024, which was the year that I really locked into curing the Lyme's, was I had to recognize what the teachings or the medicine of the Lyme's actually was for me. What was it bringing me? What was it offering me? What was it allowing for? And what was it forcing me? And one of the things that it was forcing me to do was to really let go of people pleasing, right? If you think about any form of bacteria or virus that's coming into the body, it's living off you. And so these energetic attachments that people could have of me. And so it really forced this prioritization. And so based on all of that, I have developed a process called Living Life as Medicine, because I do believe that life is our pathway to the medicine that we need and seek. And so that's basically broken down into 4 steps. So the first thing we do is we look. So L is for look. We've got to look. We've got to actually recognize that often the thing that we perceive to be the challenge, in my case, the physical symptoms, is the last thing that's happening in a line of events designed to draw our awareness. And so if we look at where our awareness is being drawn, what we're going to find is a signpost from life telling us, here's some medicine, or here's an opportunity for some growth or some healing for you. The next thing we want to do is we really want to anchor into our body. So we want to get out of the head, because the head is distorted truth, and we want to get into the body because the body doesn't have the capacity to lie. We're going to find more truth available to us when we are in our body. We're going to find more clarity as far as movement forward is concerned. The next thing we want to do is we want to map it out. We want to actually look at, okay, so underneath the surface, what's actually happening? And there's 4 questions that I like to ask. And I think these are kind of like a shortcut, so to speak, as far as finding or figuring out what the medicine of the situation actually is. And they are, what is this situation forcing me to express, to adopt, to embrace, or to let go? And through the answer of those questions, what you'll find is where life is giving you that nudge. And that in and of itself shows or highlights the medicine of the challenge. So if we can actually embrace what life is forcing us to, then life can stop pushing so hard, and we can actually step into more grace and ease. The last thing is move. So this is about taking the action that you've now realized you are being forced into. And, I think these 4 steps really can fundamentally change everybody's life for the better by reducing the amount of time that we spend in unnecessary suffering when we are fighting what life is trying to show us, fighting where life is trying to guide us, and fighting the challenges that we're experiencing because we're trying to avoid that immediate pain or that acute pain, and instead opting for chronic pain, which is long and numb and dull and eventually becomes so overwhelming that it will take your legs out. So it's really about looking at the cause of the situation and about taking your power back in that. Oh, I can't hear you, hon.
Thank you. I was saying, what an incredible journey you've been on, a journey of self-discovery, advocating for yourself, and now you've come out on the other side. What did that moment awaken in you about healing and identity, especially when you lost your hair at 19?
Yeah. So I guess when I lost my hair at 19, that would have been the first sign of the Lyme's disease. That's how we can track it back. In that moment, to be honest, I was a very, very different person. I was a very angry young lady. I had, some challenges as a teenager that I was quite resentful about and really quite disconnected from who I was. I had lost faith in myself and in the world, and I'd lost trust in the people that I'd loved. And so it was a really, really, I guess my experience of my hair loss was a little bit of a middle finger to life. Like I actually really owned it from the get-go and claimed it as my own. And, you can't hold me down. You can't tell me what to do. And you can't tell me how to look. So, I think I was lucky in the sense that A, I wasn't in high school anymore. I think it would have been a very different experience if I had still been in high school. And B, when my hair fell out, I also wasn't in my home environment. I was traveling around the world. I was hyper independent. And so, for me, it was quite freeing, and it was a reclamation of my own power, even though it was completely out of my power. So, which is quite interesting. But when I found out that, the hair loss wasn't going anywhere, that was a different thing. And I guess for me, what started to become really apparent was that my own insecurities were mirrored in the people that I would come across based on where I was in those insecurities. So for most of the first couple of years of my hair loss, I didn't notice the stares. I didn't notice the snide remarks. I didn't notice the whispers. I didn't notice any of those things. It was only when I started doubting myself, particularly as a parent, and I started questioning myself as a woman, all of a sudden I got hit with this wave of other people's projections around my hair loss. And so it was really interesting. And I guess that was one of the first indicators to me around the reflection or the law of reflection that is constantly at play.
Right. Wow. Absolutely crazy. So you've said that many people outsource their healing. What does true self-healing mean to you?
True self-healing to me really means taking full ownership of the experience that we have in our body-mind and the expression of that truth outside into the world. So having congruence between my inner experience and my outer expression, I think, is the epitome of a healed state. Now, that could mean a variety of different things for lots of different people, but it also means following your passions, following your frustrations, following, the points of the external environment that is, and advocating for the things that matter to you, whether that is your family, whether that's something that's going on in the community, whether that's some change that you see that needs to happen, but really doing that from a position of integrity within yourself, knowing that you have your own back first And
Yes.
from there, you have the capacity and you have the vitality to be able to influence externally. I think where people go wrong is we try to influence externally first, and we
Mhm.
forget about the internal integrity. And
Yeah.
what happens is that life will then force you some way to come back to self. And so it'll do that through a health challenge, through a relationship breakup, through
Yeah.
financial hardship. It's going to make you come back and look at, well, is your house in order, right?
Yeah. So, how did the unresolved childhood trauma influence your health and your emotional landscape, do you think?
So it's a fantastic question. For
Mm,
me, the biggest element of my childhood that has, um, I guess, vibrated through my adult experience was a sense of rejection. And,
right.
I'm sure there would have been little moments of that through my early childhood years, simply because I'm such a loud person, right? I'm highly extroverted. I love attention. I engage with people a lot, and I really enjoy being with people and being amongst people. And
Right.
having a child like that, I could imagine would become exhausting at times. And so I'm sure just by the nature of the dynamic, there would have been points in time. And I remember points in time where it was like, okay, Nerida, enough. Like, that's enough. We've had enough. Like, you need to stop. And so there was this, I guess, underlying current from my family, who loved me and were very, very patient most of the time. But
Right.
also friends, teachers, etc. That was, you're a little bit too much. And
Okay.
and then when my parents separated as a teenager, my dad actually chose to move to another country
Right.
through that. And that felt quite intense in the rejection. I took that rejection on myself and really internalized it.
Right.
Um, and it wasn't until I was really starting to look quite deeply into my hair loss that I recognized that when my dad left, what actually happened was that I perceived that he rejected me in that. And so the
Mhm.
part of me that was alive through that time period, I then rejected in order to try and protect myself from future rejection, right? And so
Right.
it was the rejection of self that actually caused the physiological symptoms. And so
Wow.
since recognizing that, so I would have been about 24, 25 when I came to that conclusion. So since that time, my
Mhm.
mission in this life has been self-acceptance. And
Mm,
layer by layer, piece by piece, subtlety by subtlety, it's really been about how much can I continue to accept, and that really has driven all of my work. So
right.
I really I don't believe that that's a coincidence, that that's what I'm here for, and that that's what I experienced in order to drive the curiosity and intrigue that ensured that I would research what I needed to research in order to be able to help myself and other people actually claim all of who they are.
It's amazing that you had to go through all of this to come to this realization this later in life. So, at what point did you recognize your physical symptoms were messages and not just medical issues?
That's a great question. I mean, early days, to be honest. I don't know how and I don't know why, but I always had an intuitive knowing that there was a link.
Right.
Um, and so I don't know, like I feel like I saw people, even as a teenager, living out repetitive patterns. And I was like, I understand that if you don't deal with an emotional issue when it happens, then what is going to happen is you're going to repeat that issue. And
Comes
so it comes back and it keeps on
from-
coming. So, like, it's the classic, a child who may have been sexually abused might then go on to be abused sexually as a teenager or in their early 20s, or might find a partner who is abusive. We tend to be drawn to the familiar
Yeah.
and over our desire, so the unconscious mind is so much more powerful. And so, yeah, I can't tell you where that came from, but for me, from the very beginning, I was like, there's an emotional link here. My job is to figure out what that is and to be able to resolve it.
Wow.
And that was a curiosity that really drove then all of the research that I was doing.
Yes. Now, you've navigated gut issues, fatigue, cold dysfunction, and autoimmune symptoms. What kept you going during those dark periods, do you think?
Oh, my children, definitely.
Mhm.
Like I say, I was a single mum at the time, and for me, it was unacceptable that my children would feel that I didn't fight for them,
Right.
because that's how I had felt. And so even in that, my parents had prepared me to be the best parent for my children.
Yeah.
In my experience of feeling like I wasn't fought for, it was unacceptable for me, for my children to feel that. And
Right.
so I really was willing to do whatever it took. I was willing to let go of whatever needed to be stripped back. My identity was completely up for grab.
Mm.
It really, at that time, and still to this day, it's kind of trained me into a new way of being with myself, in the sense that, I really believe that we have our plan, right? There's our plan,
Yeah.
super, super sweet and super cute. And
Mhm.
then there's God's plan, whatever you identify as God, the universe, cosmic consciousness, whatever, life in and of itself. And life will always win out. And so for me, it's like, what is life trying to show me that I have yet to see about myself, that is even more powerful, even more beautiful, and even more impactful than I could have possibly imagined? And so I have
Mhm.
trust and deep faith in that. And even though it can come in the most painful ways at
Right.
times, and really quite devastating ways at times, I believe that there is intention behind those experiences. And so
Yeah.
that also, between the combination of really being driven to be able to show up for my children, be able to show up for myself, and trusting in that life has my back, those
Yeah.
three things really helped me to get through the hardest, darkest times of my life. Yeah.
Wow.
Hopefully they're done.
So, can you take us back to that moment in January 2020 when your nervous system shut down? What changed in you that day?
Oh, goodness.
Mm.
There was a lot of my behavior up until that point, and a lot of my identity up until that point,
Mhm.
was built around trying to be seen in a certain light by other people.
Right.
And so I had a perception of how I wanted to be seen. And then and I think we all have this, right? Just neurologically, this is the way it works. We have the
Mhm.
perception of how other people perceive us. So it's a
Yeah.
perception of perception, which is so delusional. But that was really driving a lot of my experience up until this point. And
Right.
what changed for me was a complete stripping back of my ability. I mean, I had already kind of realized that I needed to let go of that. The
Right.
awareness was, but the pathway of how to actually do that, I wasn't sure how to, like, what does that even look like, right? And so
Yeah.
life comes in and goes, here you go, you're welcome, I'll provide you the path. And so being so ill, like, I wasn't able to show up as the strong person. I wasn't able to be the one that was helping other people. I wasn't the one who was, being a good mum. I wasn't any of the roles that I had identified as. All of them went. They all got stripped back. And
Right.
so what was really forced upon me through that time, and and I chose it at the same time, was a desire to underneath all of those things, and
Mm.
who was underneath all of those things, and to really embrace her, and to be able to step forward knowing that what I was doing was because I wanted to do it, right? What I was loving was because I wanted to love it, rather than feeling like I had to be something or put on a certain mask for other people.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, you are homeschooling 3 children while managing chronic fatigue. How
Yes.
did illness reshape your belief about motherhood?
So for me, at the time, I was, most of my children's early childhood years, I was very strict around certain things. And it's not necessarily around, like, culturally what was most people were strict around. Um,
Right.
So for me, what I held really dear was nutrition, emotional intelligence, and personal responsibility. They're the three things that as a parent I hold very, very strong.
Right.
And so, you know, I had gone from being a parent who made everything from scratch. The children were very protected from any form of toxic chemicals. You know, I was able to really show up to their emotional needs and hold them to account for, you know, being a respectful, kind human being, and following through on your word. And those things were really important to me. When I got chronic fatigue, so this was back in 2016.
Right.
Again, I wasn't able to show up in those ways. And so it was kind of like a little bit of a taster to what was to come, really. So for the first time in my kid's life, you know, a lot of the food was processed food. It was oven pizzas, because I had, throughout a whole day, I had enough energy to walk to the kitchen, which was literally the room next to my bedroom, to put food in the oven and to walk back into my bed and collapse again. And so that was really challenging. The other thing was, you know, I was a homeschooling parent at the time, and, you know, you could imagine I did not have the capacity to be a homeschooling parent at the time. However, I also knew that school at that point in time was not what my children needed. And there was a lot of evidence around that. And so even though I wasn't able to show up in their education, I had a lot of stories around how I should be able to show up as a parent. And instead of being able to do those things, what we ended up doing was watching all of the 6 or 7 seasons of the Gilmore Girls in my bed over a period of about 6 months. And what's interesting about that is, you know, I held a lot of guilt and shame about that period of time. For years after, I felt like I had failed my kids. I felt like I had, you know, really failed their education, all of this sort of stuff. And, you know, as we do as parents, we question ourselves constantly. We guilt trip ourselves constantly. And what's really interesting is, I think it was about 2021, 2022, my daughters, who obviously were now much older, they said, oh, we were talking just in a group, and the kids were reflecting on their favorite moments as in their childhood. And both of the girls said that their favorite moments through their childhood was laying in bed with me watching the Gilmore Girls, because we were all together and we were present with one another, and they had just been through their own emotional stuff with their dad leaving and things like that. And so what they actually needed through that time was a cocoon, in order to just simply be and to be held and to be supported and to have a little bit of a laugh. You know, the Gilmore Girls is such a heartfelt
show. Yeah.
Just so it's light and it's easy, you know. Yes. And what, again, if we look at it from the standpoint of life as medicine, it's like life provided my kids what they needed in that moment by slowing me down, you know, by making sure that I was not trying to do all of the things, and we could just actually be present with one another. And so it really rewrote a lot of my, it took a couple of years to kick in, but it really rewrote a lot of my, the ways that I hold myself to this unrealistic standard in parenting at times, and allowed for the true faith. And I had a surface level of this, but it really deepened the faith in my children's path.
It's just amazing how much pressure women put themselves under to be perfect for their children, despite all of the challenges that you went through. Wow.
Yeah, now, it can be really fun. I certainly don't think that I'm alone in that one.
No. So how did your partner's suicide and living in a mold-infested house contribute to the escalation of your symptoms, do you think? Because that's very dramatic.
Yeah, it was really full on. So obviously having Lyme's from the age of 19, you know, it didn't really have that full-blown effect. I mean, 2016 was a taster, but 2020 was really when it hit with full force. And I moved into the house with the mold in 2019, and the kid's dad unfortunately suicided in 2018. So how I believe this all kind of interlinked is that we know that the nervous system impacts all other symptoms, or all other systems in the body, mind. And so the grief is going to elevate the nervous system, right? It's going to make the immune system drop. There's going to be naturally physiological symptoms that are kind of as we're processing grief.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of grief and obviously a lot of increased amount of stress trying to support my children through the grief as well.
Yes.
And that in combination with the mold, which again is going to really impact the immune system, it's going to impact the nervous system. So those two systems being really degraded over that time period, the limes are designed to find a weakness in the body and take advantage of it. And essentially that's what they were able to do. Up until that point, I was really focused on my gut health. I was really focused on my nervous system and really focused on supporting my immune system because I had had all of these weird symptoms for such a long time. I was always looking at, well, how can I improve my health? How can I come back into balance? How can I accept myself? How can I love myself even more? And so there was this constant, I guess, keeping it at bay. I had gotten myself to a point where I was able to keep them at bay, but by keeping them at bay, I was also never able to discover the truth of what the situation was. And so it had to lift, it had to come up in order for me to actually truly heal. And I think that, I mean, we're talking about a physical symptomology right now, but I think from an emotional standpoint, the same situation is true for us, where we can live with these chronic conditions of emotional holding for such a long period of time. And whilst it's very uncomfortable and not something that anybody enjoys, when we do get that activation into an old emotional pain, there's actually a really beautiful opportunity for deep healing in that.
Now, let's finish off with a bit of a thought experiment where I'm going to teleport you back to the younger you. A young woman who was totally misunderstood, wasn't believed when she talked about her health symptoms. Just in case there is somebody listening to us right now who's going through a similar challenge, if you could go back and give yourself 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
Trust yourself. You are the greatest authority in your life. And the third one, life has your back. It's guiding you. Keep on digging until you find what it's guiding you to, and then embrace that. They would be the 3.
Wow. That's very awesome. Now, if I teleport you into the future this time, and we go and meet the 90-year-old you. Now, she is sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, whoever's going to be with you at the end. If you could go into the future to meet this wise woman who has been guiding you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
It's interesting that you give that specific visualization, because I have been visualizing myself as a 90-year-old woman in a rocking chair, surrounded by my family since my early 20s. And developing a relationship with her and really asking myself consistently the question, when I am her, how do I want to feel about me today? And so it's, I think for her, what I would love to find out, I guess, from her is actually nothing, I guess. The only thing that I would say to her and the only thing that I would want to hear from her is, thank you, I love you. That's it.
That is so beautiful. I play with the energy of who I am becoming. When I get stuck and I'm struggling with something, I tune into her energy and I have conversations with her. And I ask her questions and I ask, so what is the next step? I'm stuck. And I go to sleep with that question in my head. I wake up in the morning, I'm in the shower, and I have those light bulb moments where something hits me and the answer just drops into my mind. Or I talk to other people about what I'm working on, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle. By the end of the week, each person I've talked to brings a piece to the puzzle until I figure it out. So playing with the energy of who you are becoming is a very fascinating process. Listen, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with us today. I know that you are now uplifting, empowering other women who are going through similar challenges. What are the best ways that people can get with you?
So you can definitely check me out on Instagram or Facebook under Nerida Mills. And neridamills.com is my website as well. So it's NERIDAMILLS. And I do have a book that is about to be published literally in the next couple of weeks. It should be out. And that book is called Life as Medicine. And I highly encourage you, if this interview has resonated with you in some way, check that book out, because it's literally the roadmap to everything that we've been talking about, how to actually interpret what your life is trying to show you so that you can minimize that unnecessary suffering and really maximize ease and grace, because I really, truly believe that we're not here to suffer. We are here to enjoy life and to be in awe of the beautiful, intricate perfection that life holds for us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming online, and thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to help take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So if you are a woman who's experiencing some of the symptoms that were shared today, reach out and get some help, get some support. Or if you know somebody who is going through a similar struggle, please share this podcast, tag your friends, share it through your social media. Somebody out there is waiting to hear this message. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Nerida, thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story. Thank you.